My name is Alice. I'm 32. 3 days ago, I buried my father and learned that being the good daughter counts for nothing. Once lawyers start reading wills, I was the only one who stayed, while my brother Robert was building his empire in Manhattan. I was here in Millfield, changing Dad's oxygen tanks and driving him to chemo. The cancer took 2 years. I spent every day of those 2 years watching him fade. I should have done more for him, I thought. Robert smirked across the lawyer's mahogany desk, straightening his $1,000 tie. Maybe then he would have seen your true worth, he said. I stayed silent. 20 years of dealing with Robert taught me that answering him only fed him. Then Mitchell, Dad's lawyer, cleared his throat and spoke 2 words that made my blood run cold. Let me take you back 8 months. That's when this all really began. Dad had been having what he called good days, meaning he could sit up without help and finish a bowl of soup. One Tuesday morning in March, I found him in his study staring at a stack of papers. Alice, honey, he said, his voice still rasped from treatment. Sit down. We need to talk. I perched on the edge of his worn leather chair, the same chair where he read me bedtime stories 25 years ago. Now it smelled of medicine and regret. I know what you gave up for me, he said, his hands trembling as he reached for mine. Your job in Boston, that boy you were seeing, your whole life. I started to protest. Dad, don't. His grip tightened. Robert thinks he's entitled because he's successful, because he made something of himself. His laugh turned into a coughing fit that left him gasping. Success isn't just money, sweetheart. I handed him his water and watched him struggle to breathe. The man who'd once carried me on his shoulders was disappearing a little more each day. There's something you need to know about our family situation, he whispered, glancing at the door like Robert might walk in at any moment. Something complicated I've been handling alone. My heart skipped. Dad always shielded me from the family's business problem. I can't tell you everything yet, he said urgently. But promise me, no matter what happens after I'm gone, don't let Robert make any big decisions about family assets without consulting Mr. Mitchell first. There are things Robert doesn't know, things that could destroy everything if handled wrong. Before I could ask what he meant, we heard Robert's BMW rumbling up the drive. Dad quickly slid the papers into a manila envelope. Promise me, Alice. Go to Mr. Mitchell before you agree to anything. I promised. 2 weeks later he was gone. The funeral was everything Robert wanted and nothing Dad would have chosen. Expensive flowers, a catered reception, and a handful of his Manhattan contacts who'd never met our father, but showed up because networking doesn't stop for grief. I stood at the back of the childhood living room, watching Robert work the crowd like a candidate. After 3 years of caring for Dad, nobody asked how I was holding up. Instead, I got pats on the shoulder and comments about how noble it was that I'd stayed. Alice always was the sensitive one, Robert told a woman in a designer dress. Never had much ambition, but she's got a good heart. Sensitive was his favorite way to dismiss me, like my emotions were a defect rather than the reason I was the one changing bedsheets at 3:00 a.m. Mrs. Henderson, from next door, found me hiding in the kitchen staring at a sink full of casserole dishes. Your father talked about you constantly, she said, drying a plate with hands that had baked cookies every holiday of my childhood. Always proud of how you took care of him, said you were stronger than anyone realized. Her words hit harder than any of Robert's insults. He also said, she added quietly, that you had the wisdom to handle complicated situations better than people twice your age. That night, after the last guest left and Robert retreated to his hotel because staying in Dad's house was too depressing, I sat alone in the quiet living room. The silence felt heavier than the reception noise. I remembered Dad's urgent instructions to consult Mr. Mitchell. I pulled out my phone, scrolled Dad's contacts, and messaged his lawyer. Even though it was nearly midnight, Mr. Mitchell replied within minutes. Alice, I've been waiting for your call. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? There are things your father wanted you to know that we couldn't discuss while Robert handled funeral arrangements. Sleep wouldn't come that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Dad's voice. There are things Robert doesn't know. Things that could destroy everything if handled wrong. What did he mean? What could be so complicated that Dad didn't tell both of us? I had the uneasy feeling that the meeting with Mr. Mitchell the next day would change everything I thought I knew about our family. The law office smelled of old books and guarded secrets. Mr. Mitchell had been Dad's lawyer for 30 years. His weathered face carried the weight of every family crisis he'd navigated. "Alice," he said, motioning to the chair across from his desk, "your father left very specific instructions about this conversation. He worried about how Robert would react to the family's financial situation." "What financial situation?" I asked. "I've been managing Dad's books for 2 years. The construction business is doing fine." Mr. Mitchell's face went serious. "That's part of what your father wanted me to explain. The construction company's success is built on borrowed time, and Robert has no idea how precarious things really are." He opened a thick folder and spread documents I'd never seen. 15 years ago, your father quietly leased the mineral rights to the family farm to Mountain View Mining Corporation. The lease gave steady income that let him expand the construction business without taking on dangerous debt. I stared at the contracts. Mineral rights? What for? "At first, nothing valuable," Mr. Mitchell continued. "Mountain View paid a modest annual fee for surveys. Your father used that money wisely to keep the business solvent through downturns and avoid risky investments." He pulled another set of papers. "But 4 years ago, your father discovered his business partner, Vincent Torres, had been embezzling, stealing from the company for nearly 3 years before your father caught him." I froze. I'd never heard the name. Dad documented the theft and built a case, but instead of criminal charges, he chose a different route. "Torres threatened to expose the mineral lease to Robert and claim your father hid assets from his own family," Mr. Mitchell said quietly. "Your father realized Robert would demand immediate liquidation if he knew, triggering termination clauses and costing the family millions in future income. So he bought Torres out to protect the lease. It cost almost $2 million, money borrowed against future lease payments. That's why the construction company had been struggling lately. Dad sacrificed short-term stability to protect long-term family security." Mr. Mitchell reached for another folder. 3 months ago, Mountain View completed a comprehensive geological survey. They found significant deposits of rare earth minerals on your property. He handed me a letter with Mountain View's logo. They were offering to buy the land and mineral rights outright for $65 million, plus royalties over the next 25 years. I couldn't breathe. $65 million. "Your father knew this offer was coming," Mr. Mitchell said, "which is why he restructured his will 6 months ago. He realized Robert would want to sell immediately and split the money. But your father believed royalties and patient management would be better for the family long term. Robert doesn't know any of this. Robert knew Torres had been bought out, but he didn't know about the embezzlement, the mineral rights, or the mining offer." Mr. Mitchell looked at me seriously. "Your father's greatest fear was that Robert would make impulsive decisions without understanding the full value or complexity. The will was structured carefully to prevent costly mistakes." "When is the will reading?" I asked. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m., he answered. The next morning, Robert arrived an hour early with 2 lawyers I'd never seen. "Alice," he said, that tone he used when he was about to explain why I was wrong. "I've been thinking about Dad's estate. There are concerns we need to address." Miss Mitchell emerged, clearly displeased by Robert's legal entourage. "Robert, we discussed this yesterday. The will reading is at 10 hours. One of Robert's lawyers, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit, replied. "Actually, we'd like to review any recent changes to Miss Hartwell's will before the formal reading. Our client has reason to believe there may have been alterations made during a period when his father's judgment was compromised by medication." My face flushed. They were already implying Dad wasn't competent. "That's interesting," Mr. Mitchell responded calmly. He handed Robert's lawyer a sealed envelope. "A psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Sarah Chen dated 4 months ago confirmed your father was fully competent and capable of complex legal decisions." The lawyer scanned the document, and her confident expression wavered. "Furthermore," Mr. Mitchell added, "Frank asked me to document his reasons for any will changes. Would you like to hear that recording?" Robert shifted uneasily. Mr. Mitchell pressed play on a digital recorder. Dad's voice filled the room, weak but clear. "This is Frank Hartwell, Speaking of my own free will on March 15th, I am changing my will because I have discovered information about family finances that my son Robert doesn't understand. I have also learned that Robert has been in contact with Vincent Torres despite not knowing Torres embezzled from our company. Robert went pale. What? Dad? I never. Mr. Mitchell paused the recording. Would you like me to continue, Robert? Your father had recorded several conversations where you mentioned Torres as a consultant for expanding the business after the inheritance. I didn't know Torres stole anything, Robert protested. How was I supposed to know? Mr. Mitchell interrupted. Your father tried to warn you, but you dismissed his concerns as medication-induced confusion. He has 15 hours of recorded conversations documenting your responses. The room fell silent except for Robert's heavy breathing. Mr. Mitchell opened the will and began to read. To my son Robert, who has proven his business acumen in New York, I leave my construction company including assets, equipment, and contracts. However, this inheritance includes a 5-year management restriction you previously agreed to in writing, preventing any sale or merger of company assets. Robert looked confused. What management restriction? The estate planning documents you signed last year, Mr. Mitchell said. Your lawyers advised it was standard, but you agreed to a 5-year stabilization period for any inherited business assets. Robert's lawyers whispered frantically as they rifled through briefcases. To my daughter Alice, Mr. Mitchell continued, who has demonstrated unwavering loyalty and sound judgment, I leave the family farmhouse and all associated property, including mineral rights and related agreements. The silence between us felt like a chasm. That's it, Robert's voice cracked. She gets a rundown farm and I get a business I can't even sell. Then Mr. Mitchell said something that made us both freeze. There's more your father wanted you to understand about the family's finances. He pulled out the folder with the mining contracts and geological surveys. Alice, your inheritance includes more than the farmhouse. The property covers 47 acres, including the mineral rights Dad leased to Mountain View 15 years ago. He spread the geological survey across his desk, our land outlined with technical notations and colored zones marking deposits. 3 months ago, Mountain View's survey found substantial rare earth mineral deposits essential for electronics and renewable energy, Mr. Mitchell said, pulling out the offer letter. They're prepared to purchase the mineral rights for $65 million, plus royalties estimated at $15 to $20 million over the next 25 years. I watched Robert cycle through confusion, disbelief, then calculation. $85 million, he muttered slowly. For Alice's property, your father left it to Alice, I corrected. Robert's expression hardened. Alice, you can't seriously think you can handle negotiations this big. This needs sophisticated business expertise you don't have. There it was, the same condescension he'd used our whole lives. What I have, I said quietly, is Dad's trust. He chose me for a reason, because you were here manipulating him while he was sick, Robert snapped, his facade cracking. You isolated him from family and convinced him to change the will in your favor. Mr. Mitchell interrupted, Robert, I need to show you something else. He pulled another folder, the one with the evidence Dad had compiled about Torres's embezzlement. Your father didn't just document Torres's theft for legal purposes. He recorded your communications with Torres over the past year. Mr. Mitchell handed Robert a stack of printed emails, every exchange where Robert had discussed modernizing the business, bringing in outside expertise, and maximizing opportunities after the inheritance. Robert read each page, his face growing paler. Torres has been feeding you business advice and strategies for months, Mr. Mitchell continued. What he didn't mention is that these same strategies are nearly identical to the ones he used to siphon funds from 7 other family businesses over the past 15 years. Opening another folder, Mr. Mitchell revealed a police report and a series of newspaper clippings. Vincent Torres is currently under FBI investigation for a pattern of exploiting family-owned companies during periods of transition or crisis. Your father's decision to buy him out, rather than prosecute, was the only thing that kept Torres from destroying our construction firm like he did the others. Robert stared at the documents, as if they were written in another language. Your conversations with Torres weren't random, Robert, Mr. Mitchell said. He targeted you specifically, knowing you'd inherit the business and hoping to regain access to family assets through you. I felt sick. While I'd been focused on Dad's medical care, Robert had been unknowingly preparing to hand our family company over to a career criminal. I didn't know, Robert whispered. No, Mr. Mitchell agreed. You didn't know because you never asked the right questions. Your father tried to warn you about Torres multiple times, but you dismissed his concerns as confusion from medication. Mr. Mitchell played a recording of Robert's voice from a call with Dad. Dad, you're overthinking this Torres situation. Vincent has some innovative ideas about expanding into commercial development. Maybe it's time to let go of old grudges and focus on growth. And Dad's weary response. Son, if you knew what I know about Vincent, you'd understand why that's impossible. But you never wanted to know what he knew, Mr. Mitchell said. You just wanted to inherit and make changes. The room fell silent as the scope of Robert's near mistake became clear. So what happens now? I asked. Mr. Mitchell handed me a business card. You have decisions to make about the mining offer, Alice. Take your time and get proper advice. He turned to Robert, and you have a construction business to run responsibly for the next 5 years. That evening, I sat in Dad's study, trying to process everything. The manila envelope he'd sealed months ago was still in his desk drawer, marked with my name in his careful handwriting. Inside was a letter written in the shaky script of his final months. My dearest Alice, if you're reading this, it means the will reading went as I expected, with Robert angry and you confused about the responsibility I've given you. My decision wasn't about loving you more than your brother. It was about trusting you to handle complexity, without letting greed override judgment. Robert has many strengths, but patience isn't one of them. If he inherited the mineral rights, he would sell immediately to fund expansion or new ventures. Within 5 years, the money would be gone, and our family would have nothing to show for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You, on the other hand, have always thought about long-term consequences. When you were 10 and saved your Christmas money for 6 months to buy your mother a special birthday gift, I knew you understood something Robert never learned. The difference between wanting and needing. This mining money isn't something you need now, Alice. But someday when you start a family, find a purpose that requires resources, or when Robert's children need help with college, this money will still be there because you preserved it. The Torres situation is more complex than I could explain during the will reading. Robert hasn't just been unaware of the embezzlement, he's been actively building a relationship with Torres for over a year. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago, when I realized what was happening. Torres has been feeding Robert strategies that sound innovative but are designed to give him access to our assets after Robert inherits. The investigator's report is in the basement safe. The combination is your mother's birthday. What you'll find there will shock you, but will explain why I structured the will as I did. Robert isn't just naive about Torres. He's already agreed to bring him back as a senior consultant once he takes control. Torres convinced him I forced him out unfairly, and that his connections could double revenue. In truth, Torres has been living off borrowed money for 3 years, hiding from families he's already ruined, and planning his comeback through ours. I couldn't let that happen, Alice, not just for us but for the 12 employees who rely on our company and the clients who trust us. This mining money gives you options, but also responsibility. Use it wisely. Help Robert understand what family really means. Not just sharing profits, but protecting each other from catastrophic mistakes. There's one more thing. Miss Mitchell has instructions to contact the FBI if Torres tries to reestablish contact. After my death, Torres doesn't know about the mining money yet, but when he does, he'll become desperate. Be careful, sweetheart. Be smart. Sometimes the greatest act of love is stopping someone from making a decision that would destroy them. I'm proud of you, Alice. Not just because you cared for me, but because you've always protected what matters most. The basement safe also contains legal documents to protect you if Robert contests the will. I hope you'll never need them, but your brother has always been better at business than at accepting defeat. I love you both, but I trust you to do what's right for everyone. Dad. I folded the letter carefully and went to the basement. Behind the old water heater was a safe I'd never noticed. I punched in Mom's birthday, 0814, and the lock clicked open. Inside were 3 files: Torres's criminal history, evidence of his ongoing contact with Robert, and legal documents that could change everything if needed. But the 4th item made me gasp. A handwritten note from Robert dated just 2 weeks ago, agreeing to Torres's proposal to restructure the family business for maximum efficiency and profit. My brother hadn't just planned to bring Torres back as a consultant. He'd planned to sell our father's company to Torres's investment group after inheriting it. Dad hadn't just protected me with his will. He'd protected Robert from himself. 2 days after the will reading, Robert knocked on my door at 7 a.m. He'd been sitting in his car for at least an hour. "Alice," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk. Really talk. No lawyers, no recordings." I made coffee while he sat at our childhood breakfast table, looking smaller than he had in Mr. Mitchell's office. "I've been thinking about everything Dad said about Torres, about the business," he began. "I had no idea Vincent was a criminal." "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. Robert was arrogant, condescending, selfish at times, but not malicious. He'd been manipulated by someone far more experienced at deception. "I've been reviewing the company's books since the will reading. Really reviewing, not just glancing at the summaries Dad used to send me," Robert said, pulling out a folder. "Dad borrowed against future income to buy Torres out, but he also used that time to restructure the company's debt and eliminate risky contracts that could have bankrupted us in a downturn." His voice carried reluctant admiration. He wasn't just protecting us from Torres. He was protecting us from my impatience. It was the most thoughtful analysis I'd ever heard from Robert. "Alice, I want to propose something," he continued. "Keep the mineral rights. Handle the negotiations with Mountain View however you think best. But let me buy the farmhouse at fair market value. I want to move back to Millfield and run Dad's business the way he would have wanted." I blinked. "You want to leave New York?" "I've been thinking about that too," Robert said, running his hands through his hair. "My Manhattan business is successful, but not satisfying. I'm making rich people richer, but not building anything that matters. Dad's company employs 12 people here. It builds homes and commercial spaces that last generations. When Dad died, 3 clients came to the funeral to say how honest and reliable he was." His voice caught. "When was the last time someone said that about my work in New York?" I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of manipulation, but saw something I hadn't seen since childhood: genuine uncertainty. "What about your apartment? Your clients?" "I can manage my current projects remotely. I'm not taking new clients. I want to learn to run Dad's business properly before the 5-year restriction ends." He met my eyes. "I was wrong about Torres. Wrong about Dad's judgment. Wrong about you. I don't want to be wrong about this too." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from him. "The farmhouse isn't for sale," I said. His face fell. But before he could respond, I added, "But you can live here while you learn the business. Dad's room is too painful for me anyway. And this house is too big for one person." Robert stared at me. "You'd let me move back home?" "On one condition," I said. "No more secrets. No more making plans without talking to each other first. If someone approaches you about business or investments, you tell me. If I'm considering major decisions about the mining money, I tell you. We're family, Robert. It's time we acted like it." His eyes filled with tears. "Alice, I don't deserve." "This isn't about what you deserve," I interrupted. "It's about what our family needs. Dad spent his last 2 years cleaning up messes we didn't even know existed. The least we can do is take care of each other going forward." Robert nodded, unable to speak. That afternoon, we went to Mr. Mitchell's office together to plan Robert's transition back to Millfield. It felt strange but right, making plans as partners instead of adversaries. But as we left, I noticed a familiar car following us. "That's Vincent's car," Robert said, his face pale. "Torres was back, and he'd clearly learned about the mining money. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but something told me to answer. Miss Hartwell, the smooth, confident voice said. This is Vincent Torres. We need to discuss your recent windfall. I put the phone on speaker so Robert could hear. I don't think we have anything to discuss, I replied. Oh, I think we do, Torres said. I've been following developments with your father's estate, and I'm concerned you may not fully understand what you're dealing with. Robert shook his head frantically, mouthing don't engage with him. But I was curious. I'm listening, I said. Managing a multi-million-dollar mineral rights deal requires expertise most people don't have, Torres said smoothly. Without proper representation, you could lose millions to unfavorable terms. I'd offer my consulting services for a standard 15% fee, far less than most firms, and guarantee you'll end up with more money than if you go it alone. 15% of $80 million, $12 million for Torres, just for showing up. That's a very generous offer, I said. But I think I can manage on my own. Ms. Hartwell, his voice hardened. I don't think you understand what you're rejecting. I have 15 years of experience and connections across the industry. I know which companies are trustworthy and which will cheat you. Like you cheated my father? I asked. The line went silent. Then Torres laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Your father told you his version of our disagreement. He probably didn't mention I have documentation of some very questionable financial decisions he made. Decisions the IRS might find interesting. My blood ran cold. Torres was threatening an IRS audit that could freeze family assets. What kind of decisions? I asked carefully. The mineral lease income. For starters. Very creative accounting. And some construction contracts, completed with, shall we say, flexible adherence to codes. Robert grabbed my arm, shaking his head violently. These were lies meant to scare me. If you had real evidence, I said, you would have used it years ago instead of stealing from my father's business. Who says I stole anything? Torres's voice turned cold. Your father's accusations were never proven in court. They were just paranoid delusions of a sick man who couldn't handle a younger, more innovative partner. His audacity was breathtaking. I'll tell you what, I said. Why don't you come by the house this afternoon? We can discuss this face to face. Alice? No, Robert whispered urgently. Excellent, Torres said. I'll be there at 2 p.m. I hope you'll be more reasonable in person. After he hung up, Robert stared at me. Alice, you can't let him come here. He's dangerous and desperate. Exactly why we need to handle this carefully, I said, dialing Mr. Mitchell's number. We're not meeting him alone. An hour later, Mr. Mitchell arrived with 2 additional people, Detective Sarah Martinez from the State Police Fraud Division and FBI Agent David Park from the White Collar Crime Unit. Torres doesn't know it yet, Detective Martinez explained, but he's been under federal investigation for 18 months. We've built a case based on complaints from 7 families he's ruined. The problem is most victims were too embarrassed or broke to pursue prosecution. Torres is careful about covering his tracks, Agent Park added. But by threatening you and attempting to extort consulting fees, he's giving us grounds for immediate arrest. At exactly 2 p.m., Vincent Torres knocked on our front door. I opened the door to find a man who looked nothing like the confident criminal mastermind I had imagined. Torres was shorter than average, likely in his mid-50s, with thinning hair and an expensive suit that could not hide his desperation. Ms. Hartwell, he said, with practiced charm. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Come in, I replied. There are some people I'd like you to meet. The expression on Torres's face when he saw Detective Martinez and Agent Park was worth every moment of anxiety I'd felt about this meeting. Vincent Torres, Agent Park said, standing and displaying his badge. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and extortion. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Torres glared at me. This isn't over, he snarled. You have no idea what you're getting into with that mining deal. Those companies will eat you alive. Maybe, I said calmly. But at least they're not criminals. As the police car drove away, Robert turned to me with awe. Alice, how did you know to call the FBI? I didn't, I admitted. But Dad's letter mentioned Mr. Mitchell had instructions to contact them if Torres tried to approach our family. I thought it was worth a call. You set him up, Robert said admiringly. No, I corrected. I just gave him enough rope to hang himself. There's a difference. Even as I felt relief at Torres's arrest, I knew this was just the beginning. In 2 days, representatives from Mountain View Mining would arrive to start serious negotiations about the mineral rights. Unlike Torres, they were legitimate professionals who expected me to understand what I was doing. The Mountain View team arrived Thursday morning in a convoy that looked like a presidential visit. 3 black SUVs, 7 people in tailored suits, and briefcases enough to fill a law office. I met them in Dad's study, which I had cleared of personal items that might suggest naivety. Robert sat beside me, taking notes and asking technical questions that showed we were prepared. Ms. Hartwell, said Dr. Sarah Chen, Mountain View's lead negotiator, we're excited about your property. Geological surveys indicate mineral deposits that could be extremely valuable for both parties. She spread out charts and technical reports. I want to be completely transparent. Mineral extraction is complex, long-term work, with significant environmental and logistical challenges. Our initial offer of $65 million is based on current market prices and extraction costs, but these numbers can fluctuate depending on factors beyond our control: environmental regulations, market shifts, operational difficulties, or changes in demand for rare earth minerals. Robert leaned forward. Are you trying to talk us out of selling? Dr. Chen smiled. Actually, we want to make sure you fully understand what you're agreeing to. Mountain View has had past disputes with owners who had unrealistic expectations. Honest communication upfront prevents expensive legal issues later. Later, she handed me a thick document. This is our complete offer, including all terms and conditions. I strongly recommend you review it with attorneys specializing in mineral rights law, not just general practice lawyers. I spent the next hour asking questions. Mr. Mitchell had helped me prepare. Dr. Chen answered every question thoroughly and patiently. Ms. Hartwell, she said finally, may I ask why you are considering selling outright rather than negotiating a lease with royalty payments? It was a question Robert and I had discussed. My father spent 15 years managing a lease agreement, I explained. It provides steady income but requires constant attention and expertise. I'm not sure I can maintain long-term. That's a fair point, Dr. Chen acknowledged. She pulled out another document showing different financial structures: a straight purchase for immediate cash, a lease with royalties for potentially higher long-term returns, or a hybrid option, partial purchase with reduced royalties, giving immediate cash plus long-term income security. I looked at Robert. He shrugged. It's your decision, Alice. Dad left this to you for a reason. That evening, after Mountain View left, Robert and I sat in the kitchen reviewing the options. The hybrid option makes sense, Robert said. $40 million upfront, plus royalties totaling $30–50 million over 25 years. But what if the market crashes? What if environmental rules shut it down? What if Mountain View goes bankrupt? You can't plan for every disaster, Robert said. Sometimes you have to trust things will work out. I wasn't ready to decide yet. I need more time. Dr. Chen had allowed up to 60 days for a decision. I want to understand fully what I'm choosing between, I said. Robert nodded. That's smart. But while you're deciding, there's something else we need to discuss. He handed me a folder. I've been researching Torres's background, trying to understand how I was fooled. His voice was quiet, almost ashamed. Torres didn't just target me randomly. He seeks out families with aging parents and valuable assets. He showed me a newspaper clipping from Ohio, a family-owned trucking company worth $3 million. When the father became ill, Torres approached the son with consulting services and expansion ideas. Within 18 months, the business was bankrupt, and the family lost everything. Feeling sick, I whispered. The pattern was identical to what almost happened to us, Robert said. Torres targets families during crises, when adult children make inheritance decisions while dealing with grief and stress. At least 7 families we can document, probably more. Robert met my eyes. If Dad hadn't structured his will the way he did, Torres would have gotten everything, the construction business and the mineral rights. I took a breath. Dad didn't just protect me. He protected both of us. Yeah, Robert agreed. Now it's our job to make sure his protection wasn't wasted. 3 weeks into my 60-day decision period, I received a call that changed everything. Miss Hartwell, this is Jennifer Torres. My blood ran cold. Are you related to Vincent Torres? Unfortunately, yes, she said. Her voice mixed exhaustion with determination. Vincent is my ex-husband. I'm calling because I have information you need. Against Robert's advice, I agreed to meet Jennifer at a coffee shop in the next town. She was not what I expected, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, with intelligent eyes and calloused hands suggesting she worked for a living. Vincent has been calling me from jail, she said. He's furious about his arrest and ranting about your family and the mining money. What did he say? I asked. Jennifer opened a notebook. He claims your mineral rights are worth much more than Mountain View is offering. He pretends to have inside information, suggesting you could get double. I felt a chill. That's exactly why I'm warning you, Jennifer said. Vincent doesn't have insider knowledge. He tells people their assets are undervalued, then positions himself as the expert who can get a better deal. After approaching you, he tried contacting other companies to create a fake bidding war, but he's in jail. Does he have accomplices? I asked. Yes, Jennifer said grimly. I'm telling you because Vincent destroyed my family's business 15 years ago using the same tactics. He convinced my father the company was undervalued, then negotiated a deal leaving my family with nothing. My father lost everything and died 6 months later. Why help me? I asked. I'm the reason he's in jail. Your cooperation with the FBI gave them evidence they'd been gathering for 2 years, she explained, handing me Agent Park's card. If anyone approaches you claiming alternative mining deals, call him immediately. They'll say Mountain View is cheating you, offer higher prices, promise insider connections, but it's all manipulation. Be careful. That evening, I called Dr. Chen at Mountain View. Dr. Chen, I asked, hypothetically, if someone claimed Chinese companies pay more for rare earth rights than American firms, would that be accurate? There was a pause. Hypothetically, that claim would be false. Chinese companies generally buy extracted materials, not rights. International transactions involve more regulations and legal costs. Why do you ask? I explained Jennifer's warning without naming Torres. Miss Hartwell, our offer is based on standard calculations and market conditions. If competing offers appear, have them reviewed by mineral rights attorneys. Be careful with anyone promising dramatically higher payments. Legitimate companies don't make surprise offers at people's homes or promise above-market returns. Fraudulent schemes targeting mineral rights owners are common, and the FBI has ongoing investigations. After hanging up, I realized Dad's protection hadn't ended with his death. By leaving me the mineral rights, he'd given me something Torres couldn't manipulate if I remained cautious. 2 days later, David Wu called, offering $90 million for the mineral rights with minimal paperwork. I hung up and called Agent Park. Mr. Wu is Vincent Torres's nephew, Agent Park said. Thank you for calling instead of meeting. You just helped us strengthen our case against Torres. That night, Robert and I decided on Mountain View's hybrid option, $40 million upfront, plus royalties. Are you sure? He asked. I'm sure. Dad didn't save this money for me to lose it to criminals. Greed is what gets people into trouble with people like Torres. Robert smiled. Dad would be proud of you. Dad would be proud of us. I corrected him. We're finally acting like family. The signing ceremony for the Mountain View contract was Friday morning in Mr. Mitchell's conference room. I had reviewed the 40-page agreement the night before, checking every clause. In the parking lot, Robert looked grim. Alice, we have a problem. Torres escaped from county jail last night. How? I asked. He had outside help. The FBI suspects his nephew, David Wu. Neither has been found yet. Agent Park recommends postponing the signing. I stared at the law office. After everything, Dad's death, the will reading, Torres's threats, the Mountain View negotiations, this was the moment. No, I said firmly. What? Robert asked. We're not postponing. Torres has terrorized our family long enough. He won't control our decisions, even on the run, I said. Robert hesitated. Alice, he's desperate. Facing federal charges, 20 years in prison, nothing to lose. That's exactly why we finished this today, I said. Once the contract is signed, there's nothing left for him to steal. Inside, Dr. Chen and her team were waiting with champagne. Miss Hartwell, if you feel unsafe, we can reschedule. Dr. Chen said, your security is more important than our timeline. I appreciate that, but I want to move forward. The sooner this deal is done, the sooner Torres becomes irrelevant, I said. The signing took 2 hours. Every page, every clause, every number verified. Finally, Dr. Chen handed me the last pen. Congratulations, he's desperate and potentially dangerous. That's why I want to end this face-to-face, I replied. I'm done being afraid of Vincent Torres. Against everyone's advice, I told the secretary to show Torres into the conference room. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing rumpled clothes, with wild eyes, suggesting he hadn't slept in days. Yet his voice remained smooth and confident. Miss Hartwell, I'm glad I caught you before you made a terrible mistake, he said, glancing at the Mountain View team. I have information about your mineral rights that could save you millions. Really? I asked calmly. What information? Torres pulled out a folder that looked official. I've been in contact with European mining companies, specializing in rare earth extraction. They're ready to offer you $75 million, $35 million more than this American company. Dr. Chen started to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. That sounds impressive, Mr. Torres, I said. May I see the offer documents? Torres hesitated just long enough for me to notice the folder contained blank papers and photocopied forms, not legitimate offers. They're still being prepared by their legal team, he said. But if you wait 24 hours before signing with Mountain View, you'll get multiple competing offers that will increase your final payment. Mr. Torres, I said, standing, I have some information you might find interesting. I handed him the signed Mountain View contract. I just sold my mineral rights for $40 million, plus royalties. The deal is complete. The money has been transferred and there's nothing left for you to take from my family. Torres stared, cycling through disbelief, rage, and desperation. You have no idea what you just did, he snarled. That European company was going to pay $75 million. You just lost $35 million by acting too quickly. Or, I said calmly, I just stopped you from cheating me out of $40 million with a fake offer from a company that doesn't exist. Torres's facade broke completely. This isn't over, he said, voice shaking. Before he could finish, Agent Park and 2 FBI agents entered, arresting Torres for the second time in 3 weeks. As he was led away, he glared at me. You think you won? You have no idea what you're getting into. That mining money will ruin you like it ruined everyone else. After Torres was gone, the room was silent. Ms. Hartwell, Dr. Chen said finally, how did you know his European offer was fake? I smiled. Legitimate mining companies don't send escaped convicts to negotiate million-dollar deals. 6 months later, I stood in the farmhouse backyard, watching crews install solar panels on the barn roof. The morning sun cast long shadows across the garden, where Mom had taught me to grow vegetables. For the first time since Dad's death, the future felt full of possibilities instead of problems. The first royalty check had arrived the previous week, $200,000 for the initial 6 months of extraction. Dr. Chen had called to report that the deposits were even richer than their original surveys indicated, meaning future payments would likely be higher. But it wasn't the money that made me feel wealthy. It was a phone call from Agent Park. Vincent Torres was sentenced yesterday. he said. 22 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. His nephew David Wu got 15. Thanks to your cooperation, we finally put them both away permanently. I asked about the other families Torres had cheated. That's the best news, Agent Park replied. He was ordered to pay full restitution. The court is liquidating his remaining assets and distributing them to his victims. It won't make them whole, but it's something. After hanging up, I sat in Dad's study thinking about his letter on wanting versus needing. I had wanted revenge, proof I could protect my family. But what I needed was security, peace of mind, and the knowledge that other families wouldn't suffer like we almost did. Sometimes wanting and needing are the same. Robert found me in the garden reviewing house renovation plans. The contractor says they can start on the kitchen next week, he said, settling into a chair. Are you sure you want to do all this work instead of just building a new house? This is home, I said. Dad would have loved seeing the farmhouse restored properly. Robert nodded. He had been living in Dad's old bedroom for 4 months, running the construction business with competence and care. The 5-year restriction on selling the business had become a gift, allowing him to build something sustainable rather than just profitable. Alice, I need to tell you something, Robert said. Serious. I've been thinking about what Dad wrote in his letter about family taking care of each other. If anything happens to me, my share of the business goes to you, not my daughter, Madison. I looked up, surprised. Madison is your child. She's 7 years old. By the time she's old enough to run a business, she might not want to live in Millfield or work in construction. If something happens to me before she's grown, I want a guardian to help her make good decisions. He handed me a legal document. I've worked with Mr. Mitchell to set up a trust with you as trustee. If she wants to join the family business later, the shares are there. If not, you can use the money for her education or needs. I read the trust carefully. This is generous. But Madison has a mother. Jennifer might not want me making decisions about her daughter. I already spoke with Jennifer, Robert said. She thinks you'll be a good influence. She wants Madison to know the family that cared enough to protect her father from bad decisions. That evening, Jennifer called from California. Alice, Robert told me about the trust for Madison. Thank you for agreeing to be trustee. I haven't agreed yet, I said. Being responsible for a child's financial future is a big commitment. So is $40 million in mineral rights, Jennifer pointed out. But you handled that well. Why trust me with Madison's future? We barely know each other, I asked. There was a pause. Because when Vincent tried to destroy your family, you didn't just protect yourself. You made sure he was arrested so he couldn't hurt anyone else. That shows me everything I need to know about your character. 2 weeks later, Madison visited for spring break. She was a miniature version of Robert, confident, curious, and asking difficult questions. Aunt Alice, she said on her second day. Daddy says you're rich now because Grandpa left you special dirt. Something like that, I replied, helping her plant tomato seeds. Are you moving to a big city? She asked. No, sweetheart. I'm staying here. Madison considered this. Good. Daddy is happier here than he was in New York. He smiles more now. That night, after Madison slept, Robert and I sat on the front porch with a bottle of wine, watching the stars over the fields where we had grown up. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad divided everything equally? Robert asked. You would have wanted to sell the mineral rights and expand the construction business, I said. Probably, he admitted. And Torres would have convinced me to make him a partner. Within 2 years, he'd have stolen everything, mining money, business, and probably our relationship. So Dad's will wasn't just about money, Robert said slowly. Yeah, I agreed. He protected our family. Sometimes keeping people from getting what they want is the best way to give them what they need. Sitting there in the dark, surrounded by the sounds of the farm, I realized Dad's greatest gift wasn't $40 million in mineral rights. It was teaching me the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is having money. Wealthy is having something worth protecting. If this story resonated, like and subscribe for more stories about family, inheritance, and discovering strength you never knew you had. Your support helps share lessons about knowing your worth and standing up for what matters. Even when others doubt you, the farmhouse still needs work. Madison visits every summer. Robert's business thrives under careful management. But the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property. It's understanding that true strength isn't taking what you want, it's protecting what matters most.